You're running for a seat that could decide the balance of power in Washington. What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody.
The question is, did you point a 20-gauge shotgun at the chest of a black man? And you have an opportunity with all of Pennsylvania watching to say, I'm sorry. Are you going to say I'm sorry today, John?
That never happened.
So you're not going to say I'm sorry?
That never happened.
So you still refuse to say I'm sorry to this day?
I'm the only Democrat that successfully confronted
You're the only
gun
Democrat
violence.
who used a shotgun to chase down an unarmed black
Gentlemen.
jogger.
I believe I did the right thing, but I may have broken the law during the course of it, and I'm certainly not above the law.
Yeah, new at 6 tonight, the mayor of Braddock admits to pulling a shotgun after chasing a man he suspected of firing a gun near his home. And it turns out that man was just an innocent jogger.
It happened just down the road by Braddock Mayor Fetterman's home when he heard what he thought was assault rifle gunfire. He chased a man that he thought was responsible, then pulled a shotgun to confront him until police arrived. Mayor John Fetterman says he rushed his son inside, called 911, and took off in his truck after a masked man in black he saw running. But Chris Mayeras, the man Fetterman confronted, turns out to be an innocent jogger who police say had no weapon.
There wasn't any assault rifle shots. It was bottle rockets behind the library.
Mayor Fetterman did have a weapon.
A 20-gauge shotgun under the back seat of my truck, which I pulled out and I showed to just say, look, we're going to wait here and we're going to get this all sorted out when the police arrive.
Mayeras and the mayor tell very different stories. He says Fetterman
Followed me into North Braddock and pulled a shotgun and aimed it at my chest.
Did you point the shotgun at him?
No, I did not. I pointed it, way so that he would see that I was armed, but I did not point it at him. In fact, I didn't even have a round chambered or remove the safety at that point.
For both men, it was frightening. North Braddock's police chief says his officers tell him the shotgun incident was over when they arrived. Mayeras says that's not true. The police tried to laugh it off.
I mean, there's a mayor with a shotgun and 6 other cops surrounded me. What else can I do but this?
I believe I did the right thing, but I may have broken the law during the course of it, and I'm certainly not above the law if I did. But what I did in a split second out of concern as the father and the mayor.
He's trying to make it like it's okay. He's trying to justify what he did. I mean, you're the mayor of Braddock in North Braddock with a shotgun.
Looking back at what happened, did you make a mistake that day?
It's not something that an incident that I would ever, want to, repeat, because it was a jarring experience. But at the end of the day, I'm proud of the record that I've accrued as mayor. And
would you do the same thing? Today?
Well, it's impossible to say, given that it was over 9 years ago and circumstances
do you think you did the right
are
thing
different.
That day?
But what I did was, as chief law enforcement officer and as mayor, I made the split-second decision in an active shooter situation to make sure that the community was safe and secure, and that's exactly what I did.
Let me just be crystal clear, because it's very rare we get John at an event. And so I'll say directly to the lieutenant governor, for somebody who has cut an image as an incredibly tough guy, you're so afraid of 2 little words: I'm sorry. You did take a 20-gauge shotgun, get in your pickup truck, travel into another town, and brandish that weapon at the chest of an unarmed black jogger. You did that. The problem is that John still, 9 years later, refuses to do one of the most important things that you want from any leader. You want them to be self-reflective. And I think John has gotten away with this for too long, with this idea that as long as he didn't know the jogger was black, it was fine what he did. It was not okay what John did. And John, I hope tonight you would say those 2 simple words: I'm sorry. The lieutenant governor has been able to get away with this again and again and again. You don't have to take my word for it. At the time, the lieutenant governor said, I may have committed a crime, and if I did, I am not above the law. He was not held accountable because powerful men like him are very rarely held accountable.
A person puts a shotgun in a man's chest, an innocent man. Imagine it being a white Republican.
Under Fetterman, the population of Braddock dropped 40% to just 1,700 people. The poverty rate increased, and the number of violent crime incidents went up. His political ads even say that he, quote, rebuilt Braddock. He still lives there. He has tattoos of Braddock's zip code on one arm. He has the dates marking when someone violently died in the old steel town on the other. But the statistics tell a different story. Under Fetterman, the population dropped 40% to just 1,700 people. The poverty rate increased, and the number of violent crime incidents actually went up. One resident told me, Braddock, rebuilt, take a look around you. There's nothing here. Other locals have accused Fetterman of being a carpetbagger, an outsider, telling the press, quote, Braddock became all about him and less about the community.
When he ran for mayor, it was all hopes, that he'd bring it back. But I think he just used it as a stepping stone. He didn't really turn Braddock around. He bought property for himself, which he's profiting from. So
you would think as a mayor, you would go out and reach out to the local businesses and say, I'm the mayor. If anything I can do to help, let me know. It never happened. The renaissance of Braddock coming back, it never did happen. I mean, just like, how many vacant buildings we have here?
Some local residents and businessmen who say, look, they are conservative but gave Fetterman a shot, scoff at the notion that he rebuilt Braddock.
I'm like, built back Braddock? Brought jobs? I don't know what jobs he brought. What did he build back? If I had a chance to do it over again, I probably wouldn't have come here. The renaissance of Braddock coming back, it never did happen.
After a couple run-ins him and I had, he stopped coming to meetings, stopped coming to council meetings, which he should have been at all council meetings to break a tie in case there was a tie, or if he had some input. He could put the input in, but he didn't do that. So what I've seen since he's been here, he got credit for everything. Everything that's happened in this community, he's got credit for it. The people believe that all this has come about through John Fetterman, and it's not true.
I also spoke with Shardea Jones, who succeeded Fetterman as mayor.
He would come on the news every time someone got shot and get his arm tattooed with whomever's name or initials, but that's as much as you've seen him.
And you came in as mayor after him?
Yes.
You didn't have a personal relationship with him, a phone number? He didn't say, call me if you need anything like that?
We've never had a conversation.
That's really surprising.
Yes.
That never happened.
The Associated Press reported John Fetterman missed a third of state Senate session days in 2021, even though presiding over the Senate is one of the lieutenant governor's chief duties. The campaign responded that many of the meetings missed were because Fetterman was attending Board of Pardons hearings as part of his effort to reform the criminal justice system.
The Associated Press released a deep review of Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate John Fetterman's time as lieutenant governor. And after looking at calendars and attendance records, the AP says they found Fetterman typically kept a light work schedule and was often absent from state business. The review also revealed he had nothing listed on his schedule during about a third of his work days and the $179,000 a year job.
Like I said, I didn't like Fetterman as a lieutenant governor, mainly his attitude. I don't like people to say it's my way or the highway kind of deal. I believe we should all sit down at a table and let's hash it out and, figure it out and get us all moving in the same direction. Right now, we're all, like everybody said when we got here, everybody's pointing their fingers and he's one of them finger pointers. And that's what I really don't like about him.
John Fetterman, for example, has called for the mass release of convicts who are serving life sentences in prison. And by the way, life sentence in prison, this is not one of those, we always hear about the mythological people that are in prison because they, had a little bit of weed or something, and they were next thing you know, they get 10 years in prison, supposedly. You get a life sentence, it's not for weed, we can tell you that. But he wants to release a lot of them. Let's listen to that.
We have a catastrophic bottleneck in our prisons of over 5,000 men and women condemned to die in prison. And many of them, I believe, personally, are deserving of a second chance.
Catastrophic bottleneck, he says. In fact, John Fetterman has been more specific talking about this and has said that he wants to release up to 1/3 of the prisoners who are serving life sentences because of the bottleneck.
I'm actually a Democrat that am running on a crime of record because I actually did that.
Fetterman may dress like a teenager getting high in his parents' basement. But he's a raging lunatic hell-bent on springing hardened criminals out of jail in the middle of the worst crime wave in Pennsylvania history. He wants everybody out of jail. And by the way, he wants to get rid of your police. Fetterman is a defund the police Marxist who's just pulling the wool over people's eyes, who literally said that if he had a magic wand and could fix one thing, he would end life sentences without parole for murderers, cop killers, rapists, and other monstrous criminals. That's what he said.
If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and fix one thing, what would it be?
Life without parole in Pennsylvania. We could save billions in revenue long term. We could save thousands of lives and not make anyone less safe. And also expunge as many permanent records of people that have been living their best lives and have been paying well beyond when they should have for a charge that they caught, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
And even when his words were, strictly speaking, intelligible, they still, when you added them together, made no sense. In March of 2021, to name one example, Fetterman demanded the release of all 1,200 people, all of them, held in prison in Pennsylvania for second-degree murder. Watch.
I hope that it could lead to a conversation that would free close to 1,200 people of a legacy that never made sense, that encompasses victims' input, encompasses their conduct and behavior in prison. It takes a look at the resources that are wasted on that. I have a good working relationship with our corrections secretary, and he said something on a panel that I was on with him. He said, we could call 1/3 of our prison population out of jail and not make anyone less safe. And I don't know why we all wouldn't want that. As Lieutenant Governor, I'm chair of the Board of Pardons. And the protests and the anger and everything is understandable. And you see it taking hold all across Pennsylvania. And I've been consistently wanting to tie that action to addressing what I think would be an enormous game change all across Pennsylvania with criminal justice reform. We could release 1/3 of our prisoners and not make anyone less safe.
The other side, the Oz campaign and the money behind it, John, is suggesting you want to let violent criminals out of prison, including people who have murdered, who are in for life. How do you respond when they say you're not only soft on crime, but want to open the doors to prison?
No, that's just a lie. Again.
Hey, John, are there any murderers you didn't try to free from prison? Mr. Fetterman, are there any murderers you didn't try to free from prison?
Well, what happens if one of them gets out and does something horribly wrong?
First and foremost, it would be catastrophic and be personally devastating if somebody hurt somebody. That there's always that possibility theoretically. Thousands of people are paroled, so the vast majority of inmates actually cycle through and they reemerge.
Well, there was a woman who was stabbed to death with a pair of scissors by a man. Guess who was the lone vote to get this man and commute his sentence, this guy convicted of first-degree murder? A guy named John Fetterman, who happens to be the Democrat nominee for Senate in Pennsylvania. This same man wants to end open carry for law-abiding men and women who just want a gun to protect themselves in high-crime jurisdictions, which happen to begin with D for Democrat. That is where we see this. L.A., New York City, Philadelphia. There is a trend here. Here are just some of the convicted murderers that Fetterman put in the lone vote. He was the only one to put back on the streets. Take a look at these men. John Brookins, he was convicted of first-degree murder for killing a 58-year-old woman with a pair of scissors. Alexis Rodriguez, convicted of murdering a 17-year-old. Rodriguez bragged about beating the 17-year-old boy with a baseball bat. And then there's this third one. Again, remember, Fetterman's the lone vote here. Wayne Covington, convicted of first-degree murder for shooting and killing a teenager in cold blood for heroin money. Harris, it's not as if it was a unanimous vote by the parole board. There are many examples of that. He was the lone vote for these individuals getting out of jail. And this isn't a movie for the victims, for the parents of the 17-year-old boy.
My concern about voting in Pennsylvania is the Republicans are looking to amend our Constitution here in the state that mandates, ID every time, not just when you sign up, but every time, which is, again, outrageous. It's illogical and it's unfair. I am horrified that Republicans are going to attempt to change Pennsylvania's Constitution to make voter ID mandatory in Pennsylvania, which, of course, disproportionately will impact people of color.
And today he called universal voter ID insidious and unnecessary.
Universal ID and some of these other measures are a solution for a non-existent problem of voter of voter fraud, and it's simply voter suppression.
I'm a big supporter of sanctuary cities.
Sanctuary cities is another policy that I very much support. Sanctuary cities, again, statistically, makes everybody safer, makes everybody better. I stand with that idea, and I always believe that immigration is America, and I would never just turn my back on those kind of like core values as well. True. So,
Fetterman supports taxpayer-funded drug dens and the complete decriminalization of illegal drugs, including heroin, cocaine, crystal meth, and ultra-lethal fentanyl.
I think it's important that we as a society have all the options on the table, including needle exchange, which is only technically legal in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and even safe injection sites that are being considered, like, say, in Philadelphia. I'll never forget the meeting that I had down at the DSCC where they, evaluate you and your campaign and your candidacy. And one of the things that I kept talking about was the opioid crisis. And they were just like, wait a second, what are you talking about? Like, you want to legalize heroin.
And then also have a bigger conversation about decriminalizing drugs in general.
Clarify, please, your stance on the harder drugs, heroin, cocaine, and things like that.
Absolutely. I never advocated for legalizing any of these hard substances, ever, or any of that.
Contrast that with my opponent, John Fetterman, who on this debate stage said that he would demand federally mandated rules for all states they'd have to follow that would allow abortion at 38 weeks on the delivery table, and he would force it to be subsidized by taxpayers across the country no matter what their personal beliefs are. That's radical. That's extreme. That is out of touch with what the average voter in Pennsylvania believes is appropriate.
Your fellow Democrat running for Senate in Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, has said that he does not believe that there should be government limits on abortion at all.
Do you support any restrictions on abortion?
I don't. I've always believed...
Even in the third trimester?
I believe that choice is between a woman, her doctor, and a God if she prays to one.
Do you believe there should be any restrictions on abortion?
I don't. I believe that's a choice between a woman and her doctor. As a politician and a man, I don't have any input in that. Women's reproductive freedom is sacred. I ran on that in 2016. I warned about Texas's attempts to encroach on it then, and nothing's changed except they've delivered on their threat. Women's reproductive freedom should not be up for debate. Abortion is health care, and if there's ever a vote that I'm participating in or a part of in the United States Senate, it's always going to come down to affirm women's reproductive freedom without any qualification whatsoever, and that it is something that we should not even be discussing as this country. This is settled case law. And if elected as your next United States Senator, there is no outcome that I would support that diminishes in any way women's reproductive access to abortion, birth control, and health services across the line, and that includes strengthening Planned Parenthood. If I'm in the United States Senate, I would immediately support the first campaign to support the elimination of the filibuster, to make sure that we codify women's reproductive freedom in law, to make sure that even if the Supreme Court does go down that road and eliminate or revoke Roe v. Wade, that we already existingly codify that into law and make sure that we can't go back. Abortions are going to continue in America, whether it's legal or not. They just won't be safe if they're illegal, and we can't ever go back to that. We just can't.
And are there any limits on abortion you would find appropriate?
I don't believe so, no.
I don't want my taxpayer dollars going towards funding abortions. And that's John Fetterman is going to be a 51st vote to get rid of the filibuster, which can get rid of the Hyde Amendment, which Joe Biden historically was for until recently.
Fetterman openly supports deadly sanctuary cities, and he signed a pledge to ban fracking, which would demolish almost 1 million jobs in Pennsylvania. I told you they were going to do that, Pennsylvania.
Is the fracking issue something that's going to resonate in Pennsylvania? And do people in Erie like hearing that he doesn't give a shit about them?
Not at all. There is not a single block of Pennsylvania voters that, given what happened in 2020 and where we're at now, that's going to say, well, I don't know what fracking is, or I don't know the industry. It's not in the top 5 of any meaningful amount of voters.
I'm not pro-fracking. I signed the no fossil fuel pledge before the cool kids were doing it back in 2015.
Every single message I got was asking to clarify your stance on fracking.
Yeah, fracking. No, I don't support fracking at all, and I never have. I don't support fracking. I think it's something that has to eventually go away, and I would like to see it, transition out. The president's team is dicking around with fracking as a wedge issue when no one cares about it right now.
Unfortunately for Fetterman, I don't think he's up to it. I don't believe in a lot of the positions he's taking. That was clearly he's anti-fracking, and last night he said he's for fracking, which doesn't make any sense, and also the crime.
I do want to clarify something. You're saying tonight that you support fracking, that you've always supported fracking, but there is that 2018 interview that you said, quote, I don't support fracking at all. So how do you square the two?
I do support fracking, and I support fracking, and I stand, and I do support fracking.
But you have made 2 conflicting statements regarding fracking. In a 2018 interview, you said, quote, I don't support fracking at all. I never have. But earlier this month, you told an interviewer, quote, I support fracking. I support the energy independence that we should have here in the United States. So, Mr. Fetterman, please explain your changing position. 60 seconds.
I've always supported fracking.
In 2016, during your first run for the Senate, you were a vocal critic of the fracking industry, and you called it, and I quote, I believe, a stain on Pennsylvania. Then in 2018, you said, and I quote, I don't support fracking at all, and I never have. Can you tell us with a simple yes or no, if elected, sir, will you support fracking?
I absolutely would support fracking, and I have. And now you have a president who's building that back and making decisive actions like canceling the Keystone Pipeline, which some people don't support. And I think he made the right call. And I've done that the entire time, running on core progressive values that were once considered too left to run in the Democratic mainstream back in 2016, if any of you remember my first race. Bernie Sanders and I agree on a lot of other issues, too, that are critical to this country's future, whether it's immigration, whether it's marijuana legalization, whether it's universal pre-K or affordability for college education. We stand together as the most progressive candidates in our respective races, and it's my pleasure and privilege to stand with Bernie and to have Bernie's back.
The party was going, and I'm proud to endorse Bernie Sanders in 2016 because I believe he's where the party is and where the party should be, and clearly he shifted the debate in our party drastically, and that's healthy for the Democrats, and we share so many commonalities, and his message is resonating, and I think that's why my message is resonating, where it's like.
And I'm proud to say, if I'm your next lieutenant governor, I will have Bernie's back on all the issues that we all hear about.
And that's why I endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2016, because I believe he is where the party needs to be and where the party should be. He and I agree on virtually every issue.
But to play devil's advocate here, if I'm a swing voter out there, a young voter, a working class voter, I hear your message, I think, but you guys control everything. Democrats control the House and the Senate and the White House. and inflation is really high and I'm having a tough time making ends meet, why should I vote for you again?
Well, we have half the votes, exactly half the votes in the Senate and a tiny majority in the House. And I think it's important that when we talk about inflation, Republicans will say, well, this is Joe Biden's fault. Really?
The economy is on the upswing. You know, Joe Biden has brought a sense of normalcy and competence to everyday life that was lacking during the pandemic. And as far as policies go, you know, whether it's Build Back Better, whether it's the infrastructure plan, you know, all these great investments. I mean, the Biden presidency is going to be transformative, certainly through the remainder of his first term, second term, or throughout. It's going to reverberate for quite a while because, you know, they have been able to get some important legislation passed, but nevertheless, there's still a lot that should get done you know, in the Senate, and we need to, in the United States Senate, Democrats should vote like Democrats.
And also, I certainly would have voted for the Inflation Reduction Act.
Has the Biden administration overspent? And if so, where do you think spending should be cut? You have 60 seconds.
No, here's what I think we have to fight about inflation here right now. That's what we need to fight about inflation, you know, right now, because it's a tax on working families, you know. And you can count on us to eliminate the filibuster. Eliminate the filibuster and let's get some stuff done for America. I am grateful for the Affordable Care Act. That being said, we are the only country in the world of an industrialized nature that doesn't recognize health care as a fundamental right. Everybody gets sick, everybody needs health care. Single payer is the ideal that we should all move towards.
Do you believe transgender women should be allowed to play on women's sports teams at the youth through college level?
Yes. I watched those events on the television where they took over the Capitol, much like everybody else did. It felt very 9/11. It felt very surreal.
I dealt with John Fetterman when all the restaurants were closed during COVID, and I spoke up at Harrisburg with a lot of other restaurant leaders, and we're out in front of the Capitol building in Harrisburg speaking about our businesses being closed and asking for help to reopen our businesses and treat small business owners like people instead of criminals. And while we're delivering our speech, we're standing right in front of Fetterman's office where he has a giant marijuana flag hanging. John Fetterman's objective while we're in the middle of COVID was legalization of marijuana and decriminalization of marijuana and getting more and more people out of jail. Now, those may be topics we can all talk about, but in the middle of a pandemic, John Fetterman did not help a single small business. He did not come meet with any of us. He didn't help promote or push forward any legislation to support small business owners. His objective remained very clear during all of COVID. The objective was legalize marijuana and get more people out of jail. And now all of a sudden he's saying that's not what he's about. And that's exactly what he's about. He did nothing for small businesses during the pandemic. Not one thing.
Remember, Barack Obama won 2 terms in a commanding fashion.
Right.
So there hasn't been some massive sea change. And of course you have nationalism and racism, but you've always had that as part of the Republican base.
Well, I mean, I'm not afraid of anything, and certainly not the NRA. And let me be clear, the NRA does not represent the overwhelming majority of what gun owners really believe and want. That is the lunatic fringe of gun ownership.
And the Democrats nominated a candidate, and I don't want to diss him in the slightest, but as we all know, he had a stroke before the primary. We didn't know the severity of it at the time of the primary. But it's obvious that it was more serious than the campaign admitted. And we still haven't seen the candidate out on the campaign trail. They keep saying he's going to appear in July, so I guess he has another 20 or 25 days to appear.
He's not here. And if John can't show up to talk to other Democrats about the importance of this race, about what he would do as our next United States Senator, who the hell really believes that John is going to be able to show up and stand up and fight for our values in Washington?
This is former Democratic National Committee woman Donna Brazile on John Fetterman not showing up to debate.
But this is the truth. He should have been here. He should have been here.
It's fair to wonder whether Fetterman is 100% or whether he's going to make a full recovery from that stroke that he had 3 months ago. He's really been shielded from the media thus far. One of the interviews that he did was with closed captioning. He's done 2 public events. He spoke for about 10 minutes at one of them and 4 minutes at another. So, people rightfully, I think, want to know, how's he doing? But
that's what it takes to win statewide in Pennsylvania. And it all starts with the respect of showing up and being willing to answer their questions and talk about your views and listen to them and learn from them. I have never seen that from John Fetterman. He says the same thing over and over again, little Twitter sound bites. And when he gets a chance to actually answer your questions and be held accountable, he skips it. It's unacceptable, and that's how you know he's not ready for this.
With that, let's get started. Mr. Fetterman, we're going to begin with you.
Hi, good night, everybody. And this campaign is all about, to me, is about fighting for everyone in Pennsylvania that ever got knocked down, that needs to get back up, and fighting for all forgotten communities all across Pennsylvania that also got knocked down, that needs to get back up.
When John Fetterman brings up houses, the irony is he didn't pay for his own house. He got it for $1 from his sister. And he hasn't been able to earn a living on his own. He's lived off his parents. So it's not a topic that we should be debating on the stage. We should be talking about crime and inflation, the issues that are hurting Pennsylvanians that they're talking about at their kitchen table.
No, that's like, he got his Pennsylvania house from his own inlays from $1.
Mr. Fetterman, we have to continue on. In an op-ed for the Wilkes-Barre Times Leader, you wrote, quote, "It is time we crack down on the big price gouging corporations that are making record profits while jacking up prices for all of us." How do you plan to do this, sir? You mentioned going after price gouging corporations. How do you plan to do this? You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. We have to keep pushing back on that. And he would never make that choice to fight for families here in Pennsylvania. He has never met an oil company that he doesn't swipe right about.
Do you support raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour? Why or why not? You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I do, absolutely. I think it's a disgrace at $7.25 an hour. And how can a man, with 10 gigantic mansions, has unwilling to talk about a willing wage for anybody? Imagine a single mom with 2 children, trying to raise with them, realizing making $31,000 a year, $15 an hour.
I have a follow-up for you, Mr. Fetterman. What do you say to small business owners who have told us that if the minimum wage were increased to $15 an hour, it would put them out of business? You have 30 seconds.
No, we all have to make sure that everyone that works is able to, that's the most American bargain, that if you work full-time, you should be able to live in dignity as well, true. And I believe they haven't have any businesses being you can't have businesses being subsidized by not paying individuals that just simply can't afford to pay their own way.
I'm going to let Mr. Fetterman respond specifically about the ads being pulled off the air, and then we will return to you, Mr. Oz. Mr. Fetterman.
Yeah, I want to look into the face of every woman in Pennsylvania. If you believe that the choice of your reproductive freedom belongs with Dr. Oz, then you have a choice. But if you believe that the choice for abortion belongs between you and your doctor, that's what I fight for. Roe v. Wade, for me, should be the law. He celebrated when Roe v. Wade went down, and my campaign would fight for Roe v. Wade, and if given the opportunity, to codify it into law.
Do you support any limits on when a woman can have an abortion? Please explain in 60 seconds.
What I support on Roe v. Wade. That was the law of the land for 50 years. He celebrated when it fell down, and I would fight to reestablish on Roe v. Wade. That's what I run on. That's what I believe, and I've always believed that the choice belongs women and their doctors, and he believes that the choice should be with him or Republican legislators all across this nation.
All right. I'm sorry, I must correct that. Once again, he's misrepresented what I've said, but he also said something very dishonest. On this debate stage, he said very specifically, in his primary debate, when he was still debating, that he would support 38 weeks of mandated rules by the federal government that would prevent any state from blocking it. So that's not Roe versus Wade.
That's not true. I support Roe v. Wade. That's the simple.
John,
Roe
you
v. Wade.
said specifically you would support a federal rule on 38 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's important that John at least acknowledge that he's not honest here, because you said the opposite on TV.
Mr. Oz, we must continue. Would you support allocating federal funds to transport women who live in states where abortion is banned to states where they can get one, and why? 30 seconds.
I would. I would, because I believe abortion rights is a universal right for all women in America. I believe that abortion is health care, and I believe that that is a choice that belongs with each woman and their doctor. And I believe that, again, my doctors, the real doctors that I believe in, they all believe that I'm ready to be served.
Follow up, I didn't hear you say you would release your full medical records. Why not? You have 30 seconds.
No, again, my Dr. L believes that I'm fit to be serving, and that's what I believe is where I'm standing. I absolutely support fracking.
You have made two conflicting statements regarding fracking. In a 2018 interview, you said, quote, "I don't support fracking at all. I never have." But earlier this month, you told an interviewer, quote, "I support fracking. I support the energy independence that we should have here in the United States." So, Mr. Fetterman, please explain your changing position. 60 seconds.
I've always supported fracking.
Just a second, Mr. Oz. I do want to clarify something. You're saying tonight that you support fracking, that you've always supported fracking, but there is that 2018 interview that you said, quote, "I don't support fracking at all." So how do you square the two?
I do support fracking, and I support fracking, and I stand and I do support fracking.
The Fraternal Order of Police from Braddock, the small town he represented, endorsed me. They supported me because what he's saying is not true. Violence skyrocketed in Braddock. I mean, the town wasn't in a good shape when John got there. It got worse when he was there. People kept leaving. So, of course, you're going to have all kinds of aberrations. But, John, the city was dangerous under your leadership, and that's why the FOP endorsed me. There's one person on this stage who's broken the law, we believe. John Fetterman took a shotgun, chased an unarmed African-American man, and put the gun, apparently, according to that man, to his chest. John, you weren't pulled over by the police. They let you go. You were the mayor at the time. Why haven't you apologized to that unarmed, innocent black man who you put a shotgun to his chest?
All right. We will allow a 30-second response to that, Mr. Fetterman, specifically what he was saying, referring to the incident in Braddock.
I made the opportunity to defend our community as the chief law enforcement officer there. Everybody in Braddock, an overwhelming majority community of black community, all understood what happened. They understood what happened, and everybody agreed that, and nobody believes that it was anything about me making a split-second decision to defend our community as well.
Why not apologize?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fetterman. A follow-up question on this. Our Next Star poll shows 51% of Pennsylvania voters disapprove of the president's job performance. You have publicly supported many of his policy positions. Are there any that you disagree with? 30 seconds.
No, I just believe he needs to do more about supporting and fighting about inflation. And I do believe he can do more about that. But at the end of the day, I think Joe Biden is a good family man, and I believe he stands for the union way of life. And I believe that unemployment is already down to the lowest level in the last 50 years.
Many Americans are worried that they will never receive their full benefit or have to accept cuts to their benefits. Mr. Fetterman, how are you going to make sure it is there for them? You have 60 seconds.
We need to make sure that Dr. Oz and the Republicans believe in cutting Medicare and Social Security. And I believe that they have to support and expand Social Security. And if somebody send me to Washington, D.C., I would support and stand and to support security, Social Security.
Thank you. Mr. Fetterman, he said a few things a moment ago. I want to give you 15 seconds to respond to those.
Now, again, I can't just say one thing other than that Dr. Oz would not support, and he would support cutting Medicare. And that's
John, why do you say that? I've never said that.
It's absolutely a fact. It's a fact. You would have voted against the Inflation Reduction Act, which has dropped our prescription drugs, and he doesn't believe.
All right, let me just ask specifically, with the plan to ease student loan debt, the debt forgiveness of $10,000, $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients, do you support that position?
I do absolutely support that. I believe, like I said, but going to those kind of vocational schools, able to create a career to Wayne. Reach a lot of high salary, and again, supporting to reduce those costs are critical too.
At this time, we are ready for our closing statements. You each have 90 seconds to convince Pennsylvanians to vote for you on Election Day. Mr. Fetterman, you are first. 90 seconds.
Once again, I would just like to say that my campaign is all about fighting for anyone in Pennsylvania that ever got knocked down, that had to get back up again. I'm also fighting for any forgotten community all across Pennsylvania that ever got knocked down, that had to be made to get back up. I've made my entire career dedicating to those kinds of pursuits. I started as a GED instructor back in Braddock over 20 years ago because I believe it's about serving Pennsylvania, not about using Pennsylvania for their own end interests as well. To me, careers are revealed by your real underlying values. And my values have always been about fighting for forgotten communities all across Pennsylvania.
John Fetterman, throughout the hour, seemed to lose steam, and his answers became more incoherent the longer the debate went on. There's no way that performance convinced anybody to go out and vote for John Fetterman. And that may be the biggest problem for the Fetterman campaign. Look, we can cut it 9 ways to Sunday. The story for the rest of this week is going to be these extremely difficult moments that John Fetterman had where he could not find the right words, where he was stumbling, where he was stuttering. He started the entire evening off by saying, "Thank you, good night." And that sort of set the stage. It got worse from there.
Good night, everybody. Step and protect it. Send me to Washington, D.C. to take on to make sure I push back against work to work. I always thought I was pretty empathetic, emphatic. I think I was very, empathetic. Thank you so very much for what we have willing to do for this, because without your support, we can't send me to DC to be the kind of partner that I know you all love as Bob Casey. The difference between them is one of them wears a $5,000 suit, but they're just as dangerous, and we need to make sure what is on the line in this race.
Fetterman defending himself from criticism by Oz that his health makes him unfit for office. Oz recently released his own health records where his doctors say he is in excellent health.
I mean, he's obviously a smart person. Just so
we're upfront with people, it's a reason why we have him connected to a device that, in essence, if he's have a problem processing, he can see the words in front of him. And John, there are folks that say because you need that, you cannot function as a U.S. Senator. You just can't do it. Respond, please.
No, that's just absolutely absurd. And I mean, what kind of a doctor wants somebody that was sick that's getting better? How would you want them to remain sick? It's because there's so much is at stake here in this race, and that's why we're staying in this, and that's why we think and we know that it's so much critical that we need somebody that can actually lives in Pennsylvania, understands Pennsylvania, and has dedicated your career of fighting for, Western Pennsylvania.
Is this the most important political race in America right now?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Is this the most important political race this fall in America?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And first, I just wanted to check in and see how you're feeling and how you're doing.
I'm doing fantastic, and it's not about kicking balls in the authority or anything. And make sure you take advantage of this amazing opportunity to. The only thing you have, Stan, to lose is your record. Get it in. Thank you so much. And the Eagles are so much better than the Eagles. No. Eliminate the filibuster. Yeah! Get things done. Send us back to New Jersey. Yes. Send me to DC for you.
Tell us what we here in DC can and the surrounding areas can do to help you win.
I just getting involved, knocking on doors. And you can count on us to eliminate the filibuster if you come out and step with us. We will be able to stand with you in D.C. I gave away the lieutenant governor in Pennsylvania, the only lieutenant governor in the history to do that. And let's get some stuff done for America. Who would ever think that I would be the normal one in the race here? With that. You talk about the liberty of statue has never had an inscription inside that said, send your tired Huddard masses and put them on a bus and turn them into a cheap political stunt. One of you didn't have a doctor in your life making fun of it, making light of it, or telling you that you're not fit to be served. Can you describe a stroke and what's happened? So I use the example. So pretend I want to go to Wegmans. It's the most important race for the Senate here for 22. We have to replace Pat Toomey. Oh, no. Senator Toomey was not very nice to me. Pat Toomey is a miracle. He had a chance to match me up again. Abortion is the ballot now in November. What is wrong with demanding for an easy, safe kind of their income, a path to a safe place for them to win, to work? Please understand the stakes in this race. Send me to Washington, D.C. so I can work with Senator Casey and I can champion the union way of life in D.C. Thank you very much, and it's an honor. I live 8 minutes away from here, and when I leave tonight, I got 3 miles away, Dr. Oz in his mansion in New Jersey. You've got a friend and you have an ally. Send me to Washington, D.C. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steelworkers.
John Fetterman is either healthy and he's dodging the debates because he does not want to answer for his radical left positions, or he's too sick to participate in the debate.
How many of you, maybe yourself, have had a big health challenge in your own life. Can you even imagine that if you had a doctor that was mocking your illness? Or ridiculing that? Well, here we are. Here we are right now. I would like to think that Dr. Oz may have really lost his way if you're going to make fun of somebody that had a stroke. Remind everybody that my health now is robust and I'm able to live a normal life. It's just the fact that every now and then I'm going to miss a word or mush two together. And that continues to get better and better.
It's fair to wonder whether Fetterman is 100% or whether he's going to make a full recovery from that stroke that he had 3 months ago. He's really been shielded from the media thus far. One of the interviews that he did was with closed captioning. He's done 2 public events. He spoke for about 10 minutes at one of them and 4 minutes at another. So, people rightfully, I think, want to know, how's he doing?
He had, and we say this with no glee, but instead with deep sympathy, a massive stroke. It's not just about John Fetterman and how he's feeling. It's about the country he hopes to control if elected to the United States Senate. And so it's bad. It's really bad.
Just earlier today, I was so proud to march with you in downtown Pittsburgh. Labor Day. Happy Labor Day.
When the ability to think clearly disappears, and in his case it obviously has, what's left? The talking points. That's all that remains. And that's all he has, the talking points. The union way of life. This is a kid who lived off his parents until he was in his mid-40s. What? He's never been in a union? What are you even talking about, you fraud?
Do you think that John Fetterman, based on what you saw last night, is able to serve as a U.S. Senator? If you say yes, raise your hand. You're undecided.
Yeah.
Did you make up your mind last night?
I will definitely not be voting for Fetterman, I guess is the best way to put it.
Certainly right now, there is no circumstance under which I would vote for a Democrat. And in Pennsylvania, we have a big governor race coming up. And the Democratic candidate, Josh Shapiro, has turned around and said that he does not support school closures or mask mandates, when as the Attorney General for our Governor Wolf, he completely supported those policies. So I don't trust anything that they say at this point in time.
I got to tell you, it was very, very difficult to watch. John Fetterman clearly presented that he's not physically capable of serving in the U.S. Senate. I'm a registered independent, and generally these debates are not for the ideologues, right? They're for the people that are somewhere in the middle and really want to hear from the candidates. And I don't know how anybody in their right mind who are in the middle like me could possibly vote for John Fetterman. It was unbelievable. I feel sorry for him that his campaign and his family put him in that position. It was really, really difficult to watch.
And if we know enough about Fetterman, we don't want to vote for him.
Anybody but Fetterman.
Good night, everybody.